Hello world, my name is Andy Silvers. Today we're going to do the follow-up video on the HP ZBOOK Power G7. Alright, so this video isn't going to be quite like the full review. It's not going to be a super scripted format. It's going to be a bit looser. I'm just going to try to cover everything about the device that I either didn't cover in the previous video or elaborate on specific details that I may have not specified before. So the first thing I want to talk about is the screen. The screen in this particular unit is a full HD 1920 by 1080 non-touch matte display featuring a peak brightness of 400 nits. I really appreciate this feature because when you're doing work, particularly in bright environments like this, the 400 nits is extremely helpful for visibility, and the matte display is fantastic at minimizing reflections. If you're getting any screen with this device, I would recommend at least 400 nits. Trust me, you'll thank me later. This laptop is really interesting. It has a lot of features that can allow you to check various temperatures and settings. If you go into Task Manager, under Performance, you can take a look at the CPU and GPU. You can't look at the temperature of the CPU in Task Manager that I'm aware of, but you can look at the GPU temperature. In this particular unit, I have an NVIDIA Quadro P620. And it's currently sitting at 37 degrees Celsius. Under load, it can get up to around 54, 55. Another option you have is actually to check the battery temperature, which wasn't something I was aware of. If you actually go to the HP Support Assistant and you go to battery, it will tell you the state, whether it's charging or not charging, but it'll also tell you the current temperature. So right now my battery is at 87 degrees Fahrenheit, 31 degrees Celsius. Alright, something I didn't mention in my full review, or even the unboxing for that matter, is that this particular laptop has a great number of ports on it. But some of the ports, as another YouTuber who reviewed the same product mentioned, some of the ports are a bit tight, meaning that it can actually be physically difficult to put things in and out. That doesn't happen with all the ports, but the USB Type-A ports in particular, I noticed this problem sometimes, where I wanted to put in a thumb drive, and I could get it in, but I had to really shove it in. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but it is a problem for me. I can't say that it'll be a problem for all units of this particular device, but it has been something that I've dealt with. Inside this device, we have two SODIMM RAM slots, I believe supporting up to 64 gigs of RAM. I believe, though, that if you want ECC RAM, it only goes up to 32 gigs, and if you want regular non-ECC RAM, then it will go up to 64, if I'm not mistaken. There's two SSD slots, which I found incredibly valuable. I populated one through HP's website, and then I added my own SSD much cheaper independently after the fact. And there's also an 83 watt-hour battery. So that is actually very impressive for a device of this class. And in my experience, the battery has lasted a long time, particularly at 3/4 brightness. I would say maybe 6 to 7 hours of battery life. And if, again, I have the 1080p screen option, that helps significantly with battery life because the display isn't having to drive as many pixels. So it's a lot easier on the battery. Alright, let's talk about the ports in this real quick. As I mentioned, there are quite a few of them. This device has an RJ45 port. It has 3 USB Type-A 5 gigabit per second ports that also support charging, so you can plug in your phone into any of the ports and charge. It has a full-size HDMI 2.0 port, a barrel pin power connector, Thunderbolt 3 USB-C port with 40 gigabit per second that supports DisplayPort 1.2, and a headphone mic combo jack, as well as on this particular side, it has a smart card reader, so you can use that for authentication, and you could also use it for digital transactions. I just want to say that the barrel pin connector is really helpful to me. I really appreciate it. A lot of people, they don't like workstations unless they have USB-C Thunderbolt charging. I believe this device does, and I haven't verified that, but I think it does. However, I don't understand that. My personal take is I would rather have a barrel pin connection. I had an HP Spectre X360 before this. It was really nice, but it only had one USB-A port, and you had to charge it using one of the two USB-C ports. And the problem with this is that then I couldn't plug in something in all 3 ports and charge at the same time, which for videography, having all the accessories and plugged in is a kind of a pain. So this methodology works quite a bit better. Alright, I just want to clarify briefly the security features. This device includes HP Sure Start, a fingerprint reader, which is optional, HP Client Security Manager, HP Privacy Settings, Windows Security, and Windows Defender Firewall, as well as, of course, the smart card reader on the side, and the webcam privacy switch, which is incredibly convenient. No more putting tape over your webcam. The device weighs 4.6 pounds and features Microsoft Precision Touchpad. It's actually a pretty big touchpad, not as big as the MacBook Pros and the MacBook Air, but it is quite large and I found it to be responsive. I've never had any real problems with it. One interesting thing of note is that the device uses 2 RAM slots, as I mentioned. DDR4 RAM is supported, but if you go to HP's website and you actually purchase this with the configurator, and even without it, it says DDR4 3200 megahertz. Which is correct. If you take out the RAM module, it is SODIMM 3200 megahertz, but in the control panel, in Task Manager, it says it's running at 2933. And I did a little bit of research. The Core i5 10th gen, and I believe the i7 version processor that's available in this doesn't support 3200 megahertz RAM. It only supports 2933 and I believe 2666. So I believe in the BIOS, HP has actually dialed back the speed of the RAM slightly. So I don't know how much this affects performance. Probably not a lot, but it is worth mentioning. Since my initial video, I've had the opportunity to test more of the video rendering capabilities. Before I tested 4K MP4 footage off of a Panasonic FZ300. And lately I've had the opportunity to test Red Code RAW, which is a file format that is industry standard in Hollywood and particularly on Netflix. Red Cinema cameras are extremely high quality and are definitely a challenge for this particular device. So to test the device, I rendered a 14-minute, just under 14-minute short film, a fully edited short film with actors and a script and a narrative and all that stuff that will be coming out in a couple of months, by the way. Eventually, it may end up on the YouTube channel. Or Amazon Prime, maybe. We'll see. Fingers crossed. All 5 of them. Rendering the 14-minute video in DaVinci Resolve took 35 minutes. The video was 4K RAW. It's a mix of 4K RAW 8:1 compression, 5K RAW 10:1 compression, and a little bit of Ultra HD MP4 footage from the camera I'm being filmed on now. So in Task Manager, the computer started out at around 3.98 gigahertz, using 100% of the CPU. Basically, CPU utilization was at 100% like the entire time. So if you're doing video editing on a mobile workstation like this, top priority should be the CPU, even though there's flashy GPUs that are available for these devices. I would stick with the CPU, at least for video rendering workflow. Anyway, the render started at 3.98 gigahertz, which is actually very standard for all the video editing I've done, and that lasted for about 5 to 10 minutes. However, because of the duration of the render, it couldn't quite keep up with that particular speed, so it dropped down to about 3.5 gigahertz, and that lasted for quite a while, around 20 minutes. And again, all at 100% CPU utilization. And then for the remainder of the time, it went to 3.2 gigahertz and stayed there until the render finished. As for the GPU, which is a NVIDIA Quadro P620, it stayed at around 25 to 30% utilization with some occasional spikes up to around 35 occasionally. And the temperature went up to around 55 and got close to around 60 degrees Celsius, which is the hottest I've ever actually been able to push the GPU. As for the RAM varied a little bit. For the first half of the render, the RAM stayed at around 12 gigabytes of utilization, which is why I would highly recommend getting the 16 gigabyte configuration of this at the minimum. But anyway, it stayed at around 12 gigabytes of utilization and dropped down for the other half of the render to about 10 gigabytes of utilization. So again, that's quite a bit, and I made sure to close out pretty much everything I could in the background except for Task Manager to allow the computer to work its best. Because there are some pretty high-end configurations of this, like the Core i9 8 core and the Xeon W 6 core. However, I have the 4 core Core i5, a little bit lower tier, something that maybe a college student would likely have. Just be aware that ECC RAM is only compatible with Xeon processors. So if you want ECC error correcting memory, you're going to have to get the Xeon option. And with this particular unit, the HP ZBOOK Power G7, it only goes up to the 6-core Xeon W, whereas the ZBOOK Fury will go up to the 8-core Xeon W. I really like it in my month and a week with the device. It's been incredibly reliable and consistent. I haven't had any major problems other than the minor things that I've already mentioned, with the ports being a bit tight. I mentioned in the review that it doesn't have an SD card slot, which is probably the biggest, I don't know what to say biggest flaw, but it's a pretty big flaw. A device like this that's a workstation really should have an SD card slot. Even the HP ZBOOK X2, which is literally a tablet that came out, had one. But overall, I really, really like this product. It's very nice. It's really high quality. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I just want to say thank you to everyone who subscribed. I reached the magic 30 subscriber number, which is really awesome. And I have over 2,500 views across my videos on YouTube, which is incredibly exciting. I have other videos planned for the future. I'm not sure if I'm going to do any more videos about the HP for a while. You can tell me in the comments section if you have any questions or comments, or if there's anything specific that you want me to cover about this device. I'd be happy to do it. As for other video content, the plan is to basically do videos about writing. I am an author and filmmaker, and so the next few videos will likely be about self-publishing versus traditional publishing. I will likely go over more stuff regarding my first novel, Red Sprites and Blue Jets, which, by the way, is available on Amazon.com right now. It has a 4.9 out of 5 stars, so go check that out. And then I also plan to do a video announcing my next novel. I'm working on a contemporary fantasy. I'm not going to announce that right away, but hopefully in the next few weeks I will post an announcement video revealing the title and just talking a little bit about the project. So I'm really excited to do that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Please like. And if you have any questions, I do check the comments. So I'd be happy to respond.